Yeah, good evening. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. I'm Brian Marriott, the mayor here in beautiful San Juan Capistrano, and it's fun to spend a rare Wednesday night with all of you. So we're grateful that you took the time and came out to show interest in this greater question that we have about the use of open space. We're a pretty unique city in that we have a tremendous amount of open space relative to the rest of the square mileage of our city. Probably makes us very, very unique, maybe even one of the more unique cities, if not the most unique, in all of Orange County in terms of that ratio of open space to property that is otherwise developed. And it's a big part of who we are. And all of us who are residents of the city tonight own some of that. So we all have a stake in this. We're all co-owners of the property. And about a year ago, we began to look at some opportunities, and before that a little bit on the Patuitum Park, for exploring ways to better utilize the land. And it set off a process from there that circled back sometime later, and a specific proposal came to be and set off a little round of concern from various folks in the community. And we all talked and thought, you know what, maybe it's time to take a little step back and just hear from everybody, hear from the other co-owners of the land, and start to get a feel for what people would expect to envision there for land that either you or the person you bought your home for or some combination have paid for over the years through higher taxes. Most of our open space in San Juan Capistrano that we own, and we own several big parcels, has been bought and purchased by the residents of the city through a vote, allowing themselves to be taxed more to have that open space. And so we all have a vested interest in what takes place from there. And to an individual, I'm joined tonight by Mayor Pro Tem Troy Bourne, and then Councilmember Reeve, Councilmember John Taylor, and Councilmember, who am I forgetting? Thank you. 56 now, you know. So Councilmember Frias, we were all in agreement that we should pause for just a bit and reset a little bit and get some feedback from the community. And so tonight is really the culmination of everyone's sort of unanimous support on the council to embark in a process like this. And I think the council collectively, we may not all see the issues specifically the same, but I think one thing that we do see the same is the need for people to be very much at the front end of this, the community itself. And that's part of why this evening has come to be. There'll be another event later in the month, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm joined, in addition to Troy this evening, I'm joined by some very senior members of our staff, including Ben Siegel and Charlie View, our city manager and assistant city manager, and some of the other folks that are involved in putting tonight's presentation together that can answer questions and so forth. I'm going to turn it over to Troy now, our Mayor Pro Tem, and he's going to talk a little bit about the agenda for the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I probably, just by way of introduction, just because somebody asked me right as we were starting, they said, so is this a city council meeting? And the answer is definitively, no, it's not. This is a workshop, and you'll notice that 3 of the city council members are not here. So this is officially, I think, a meeting of a mayoral subcommittee, or at least we're operating as a mayoral subcommittee. And so this isn't a formal binding meeting in any way. It's really just an opportunity to have a conversation. I think share with you some of the things that are on our mind and some of the things that we're working through relative to Northwest Open Space, from legal, general plan, zoning, some of those sorts of things. And also to hear from you as kind of some of these conflicts kind of we can illustrate, get some guidance for you on some of the things that you value. We're hearing very loudly from some people, we really are excited about this, we really hate this, and we're hoping that tonight's a workshop can give us a little bit more nuance so that we can better understand what you're looking for and what you may like or not like about some of the different alternatives, and hopefully we can share with you some of the constraints on what we can and can't do as a city council. So having said that, the agenda for tonight is, it's not going to be a really complicated agenda. We've asked senior city staff to come and just take 5 or 10 minutes to walk us through the history of kind of how we got here. This goes back several decades. I think the mayor's done a pretty good job of saying in the last few weeks, why are we having this meeting? but they'll do, I think, a good job of quickly walking us through why and how did we own this space, and what was our intention back then, and what do the laws say about it now, and where there might be conflicts in those laws or zoning, and we'll give you a little bit more background as to why we're here tonight. Once they're done with that 5 or 10 minute presentation, the mayor and I would like to just at that point take questions, because I think that the city's presentation, just our staff's presentation, will probably trigger some clarifying questions like, is it true then, or does that make clear? Just to want to make sure that everybody in the room understands, or if they have any clarifying questions that either the mayor or I, or maybe staff might choose to weigh in and answer, and just some clarifying questions. And then once we're done with that, then we're just going to open it up to some comments. If you guys would like to share support for some ideas, express your opinions in favor of some ideas, if you're opposed to some ideas, help us understand that and why. There might be things that we haven't even considered, both positive and negative, to some of the things that we've been presented with. And particularly if you see, if you have those, you throw them up. We're not going to stand in line against the wall. We're not going to hold a 3-minute clock. So I hope that you'll try to be respectful of everybody else's time as well. If somebody does a 45-minute monologue, which it sounds like I'm in the middle of right now, be sensitive that probably a lot of people are going to want to speak. We'll pass the microphones around the room. But if someone said exactly what you were thinking, just applaud. But if you have something that you feel like really needs to be shared, by all means, we want to hear it. That's why we're having this meeting. Please also, I would also say, some people have asked, what's the difference between tonight's meeting and the meeting that you guys are going to have in a few weeks that's a similar workshop? The answer is nothing. We're just trying to be sensitive to the fact that not everybody can get off work or away from home on every night, and some people really wanted to be here, so we chose to do this in 2 different meetings. Feel free to come back if you want. You won't see a different presentation. You might hear different comments from the crowd, but if your neighbors wanted to be here tonight and either didn't find out about it in time or couldn't make themselves available because of a conflict, please ask them to come, because we're going to want to take some more information at the end of that meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the time over to Charlie View to walk through this presentation they put together, and then the mayor and I will be back up in just a minute.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So this evening I'll be walking through a number of documents, and they are available on the city's homepage. We have a website page for the city, and we have a dedicated section on Northwest Open Space. So the board you see over behind the Mayor Pro Tem, for example, and all the documents I'm going to refer to tonight are available. I'm going to talk about portions of a number of documents. The entire document is available through the web page. So first, we're going to talk about how we acquired the property. This is the Northwest Open Space. By way of reference, you can see that we've identified the Metrolink Rail, Camino Capistrano. Generally speaking, it's the gateway to the community. There's a little development just north of it, but most folks consider this the gateway to the community of San Juan Capistrano. The first thing we're talking about is how was the property acquired. We have Measure D. I'm not going to read the entire language to you. It's up there for your consideration. Importantly, it was used to purchase several properties. It purchased the Keneshita Farm property, which we are sitting in today, along with the Keneshita Elementary School. We have this property here where the sports park is, the community center is. It purchased the Swanner Ranch property, including what's called the Swanner House, currently used as a winery. We'll discuss that a little bit later this evening. The Williams property, which was an orchard property, and as I mentioned, the sports park community center property. So all these were acquired with the Measure D property. As the mayor referenced, this is unusual in terms of a lot of cities do not acquire open space through the taxes on the residents through a bond measure, but this community has a couple times. The second time was Measure Y. Measure Y was the second measure. You can see 2010. The first one was 1990. This one was, from a purchase perspective, purchased what we call the Eastern Open Space, where we have the Riding Park, Riata Park, the Creek Habitat area is all part of the Eastern Open Space purchase. There is funding left over in this measure that could be used to fund the construction of the Patina Village Park, which we'll be talking about a little later this evening. So that's how the property is acquired, and potentially some of the improvements could be funded. Next, we're going to do very quickly a little bit of planning and general plan geek work. I spent most of my career talking about these things, but I'm going to make it very fast this evening. So first and foremost, what is the general plan? The general plan is a state-mandated document which lays out vision and policies for the city. Importantly, it's not just the land use element. Most people think of, there's the color map that talks about residential, commercial, industrial. There are 7 mandated elements, and then a lot of cities, including San Juan Capistrano, have what are called optional elements. One that a lot of people hear about is the housing element. That's where the state identifies goals for housing that we have to adopt, and we identify our own goals for housing. There's the circulation element, which is the master plan of all the circulation for the community. So there's a number of general plan elements. Another one that we're going to talk about tonight is the park and recreation element. And that often is considered the constitution, the highest level of framework of policy guidance for the community. Importantly, everything else has to be consistent and not contradict the general plan. The next level from a legal perspective and implementing the general plan is zoning. And one way to look at it is if the general plan is your constitution, your zoning, your laws underneath the general plan that implement the general plan. And a good example is you might have a number of residential general plan designations: high density residential, medium density residential, low density single family. That's at the general plan level. At the zoning level, you would have zoning districts. Typically, you have R3, that's a high density or apartment district. It's going to have setbacks, building heights, parking standards that apply to an apartment. In the R1 or single family district, you're going to have building heights, setbacks, parking that apply to a single family designation. So that's a way to look at general plan, get you the overall policy. What kind of, this is an apartment area, this is a medium density area, or this is a low density area, and the zoning tells you how to build within those designations is a good characterization. There are a couple other policy documents we're going to talk about a little later this evening. Importantly, they don't have the same legal standing as your general plan and zoning. Those are both recognized in state law as your policy and regulatory documents for land use. In this case, we have the general plan land use element for the Northwest open space. It is community park, and it's a reference like in residential, you have different land use designations, high density, medium density. There are a number of open space designations. You have open space recreational, you have community park, you have general open space. So there's a variety of open space designations in this community and most communities in the general plan. This language that you see here on the PowerPoint regarding community parks is general to, we have 3 community parks identified: C. Russell Cook, Community Sports Park, and then the Northwest Open Space. Importantly, the last comprehensive update to our general plan was in the 1999 to 2002 period. The Russell Park, Cook Park, and this park were envisioned at that time, were already in place and were specifically described, but importantly, the Northwest open space, as you will see when we talk about the parks and recreation element, was also considered. So it was a known fact at that time the Northwest open space would be regulated by the general plan, both land use element as well as the park and recreation element. So this language was provided there at that time. Then, as I mentioned, we have the general park plan parks and recreation element. Separate from the land use element, it's another element, same legal standing. The legal requirement is that the elements be consistent internally so that they don't contradict each other, but they can provide different guidance and different policies to the City Council, Planning Commission, and the community to consider. This language is specific to the Northwest open space. If you go to the community, the general plan parks and recreation element, and you read about the Northwest open space, you'll see this language characterizing it for different uses: the nature center, the sports parks, possible day camp. All that was referenced to the Northwest open space. It also has policies regarding joint use, relationships to the open space element, other things provides guidance. The next thing is, you recall I mentioned the zoning document is the implementation of the policies of the general plan. It's more regulatory in nature. It provides more specific information, use, scale, parking, for example. Tonight, we're going to talk about the uses permitted in the community park zoning designation, which applies to the Northwest open space. Importantly, what we're not going to talk about, because it would be voluminous, it would be many pages, is all the uses that aren't allowed for in the Northwest open space or in other districts. And that's very consistent in terms of legal practices. You address what's allowed, and it's generally presumed if it's not allowed or not addressed, it's not allowed in that district. So these are the principal uses permitted by right. In this context, doesn't need any special approval by the Planning Commission or City Council. It could be implemented. So you have the sports fields, which is very consistent. If you look at the narrative that describes a community park in the land use element, it calls for major recreation sports uses. So multi-purpose sports fields, small sports fields, complementary picnic areas, public facilities and utilities, which includes different uses. Some of them public buildings. You could could have a museum, for example, in that public facilities and utilities, and then tot lots. So that's the permitted uses in the community park zoning designation. The next level, there's often things you say, these might be a good idea in this community park, but we want a special review by the Planning Commission and maybe even the City Council. And if you look at these, it's kind of intuitive. You wouldn't necessarily want a cemetery in an open space district, but you might, but you need some special review. A church or other religious or fraternal organization, you want to give a special review. Bed and breakfast, again, something, it's not necessarily inherently you wouldn't allow it, but you want to give it a special level of review, and that's why it needs what's called a conditional use permit. The next one are considered accessory uses. So the idea is these are not standalone, they're things that support a use. For example, you have a caretaker residence because you have a very expensive set of sports fields that you want to make sure someone's out there watching over on a regular basis, or you have a public utility facility, you have a pump house and maybe a substation out there, and you want someone on call, so they have a caretaker residence at that location. Or you have an accessory use, for example, in this context, Northwest Open Space, if it all became soccer and other recreation uses, but you wanted a small ancillary park, you could have that in there also. And then a concession stand, again, if you have soccer uses, you might want a concession stand, or Little League fields, you might want a concession stand. So these are the regulations that implement the general plan through zoning. And I'm mindful of my time, so I'm going to try and keep it moving. As I said, these documents are available through the web page, homepage, then the link to the Northwest Open Space. I mentioned earlier there's a couple other related policy documents. And again, by context, these don't have the same legal stature as the general plan and zoning, but they do provide guidance to the City Council, the Planning Commission, and the community when we're talking about various aspects of the community. City Council Policy 506 very specifically talks about uses in the Northwest Open Space. Importantly, it was adopted about 5 years after the initial bond measure. Some of the discussion is maybe it was adopted to allow guidance of what could happen in Northwest Open Space while we plan for more permanent improvements. City Council policies run the gamut. Some of them are very administrative in character, how to apply for grants, policies about spending, etc. And then this one, which is more directed to a specific use of a property. Then the Open Space Master Plan, originally adopted in 1992, updated in 2010. So back to something earlier the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, there's been an evolution of policy and guidance about use of open space in San Juan Capistrano. So again, this one is very specific. The language up here is specific to the Northwest Open Space. And you can see it talks about the Swanner House, it talks about historic orchards, talks about establishing some things that aren't there today like community gardens or active recreation uses, playfields, etc. But again, this language is very specific to the Northwest Open Space. All right, what's out there today? And I would just let you know, the use of the Northwest Open Space certainly has evolved over time. So you have the current natural open space that exists, has not been improved. We have the dog park out there. We have the equestrian staging area, which allows connection to the equestrian trails in the community. We have the Swanner House historic property. Stones Throw Winery is there today. That's a small event facility. It was approved through a license agreement. So all those are out there today. As I said, they've evolved over time. The next we're going to talk about is what's proposed with the Petitium Village. And the idea is a community park designed to reflect the historic significance of this location to our Native American community. Importantly, the design phase is complete. We have a set of plans that could go out for construction bid. One of the challenges, and those who have been following the park over the years know, we've gone through a couple design options, and they've been very expensive. And you'll see tonight we've revisited and come up with a new plan that still preserves that intention, but scales back some of the improvements on the property. Here is the aerial picture. It highlights some of the things that are still retained and what could go out to bid. So you still have the representation of the community, some of the artifacts and important cultural elements to the community, as well as the ability to take care of it and service the facility. So that's something that's bid ready if that's the council's direction. The next thing we're talking about, and one of the things the mayor referenced earlier that brought us to this evening, was a process for other uses in the Northwest open space. Importantly, this process started before the most recent council election, so some of the council members who are currently seated were not involved in this process, others were. But in August 2017, the council directed staff to release what's called a request for proposal for possible limited use of the Northwest open space. Initially, 11 proposals were received through a vetting process with our CBR Realty staff, the City Council. We ultimately narrowed that to 3 finalists who were invited to participate in a public workshop, much like this, to talk about their proposals. And in March of 2019, 2 of the proposers did participate in that public workshop. I'm going to quickly run through the 3 proposals that were considered. We had Capistrano Vineyards proposal. You can see the graphics. It included a tourist destination, equestrian facilities, recreation facilities, the preservation of the Juaneño cultural elements through the Patinan Village Park, so a variety of uses. The next was Metro Commercial Realty, and importantly, this one was more specific to soccer recreational uses. There was strong sentiment in the community that maybe a soccer use was appropriate for the Northwest open space, and Metro thought that this was a good application for that. So they did not participate in the public meeting when we had the public meeting, but they had submitted a proposal. The last one was Red Tail Acquisitions. Red Tail Acquisitions had the camping, tent sites, RV camping, but also cottages, which you call safari tents. So the term that's been used fairly regularly is a glamping type use, potentially some Airstream trailers that could be rented. But also they had the equestrian facilities, the Patinan Village Park, the idea of a community park, preserving the dog park, potential, as you see, for soccer fields if that was an interest. That project was projected to have revenue somewhere around $600,000 to $1.2 million, and then pay for maintenance of the public facilities. The reason why that's important in tonight's context is council initially directed that we enter in exclusive negotiations with Red Tail. But we're going to come back to how that ultimately transpired. So I want to talk about both the Patinan Village concept and then Red Tail Acquisitions in terms of the zoning. Back to the regulatory aspects. So importantly, each of them have what you can consider some challenges related to the proposed use when you go back, particularly to the zoning. The general plan at the policy level is not as prescriptive, so you can make some more interpretive looks at the general plan, but at the zoning level, it's much more specific. So for the Patinan Village, it allows accessory uses incidental to permitted use. So for example, if we had a lot of soccer fields and then the Patinan Village was considered an accessory, that might be one way you say it fits in the zoning for the community park zoning district. And it does allow picnic areas. It allows public buildings and facilities. It allows museums. It allows other public service consistent with the general plan. It allows sports fields. So the Patinan Village, again, could have some of those uses and can complement other ones. The zoning doesn't allow, if you think that the Patinan Village, for example, is either a passive recreation facility or an education center, those are clearly prohibited by the zoning, the community park zoning. And one of the things we're talking about tonight, and it has been discussed before, there's no one bright shining line here that you're crossing or not crossing when you look at these combination of policy and regulatory documents, and we want to share that with the community. Then we want to talk about Red Tail Acquisitions. Okay, the Red Tail Acquisitions. The community park district allows for a concession stand. So you could have some food uses out there serving some of the facilities they propose. It allows for the sports fields, allows for picnic areas, allows for, if they want to have recreation courts out there, they could do those. Importantly, and this is one of the things that have been talked about, again, about a lot in the community, it does not allow for the camping use. It does not allow for eating and drinking establishments, beer, wine, and liquor sales, and dancing and live entertainment. So a wedding venue, for example, which was contemplated in both the Red Tail, but also in one of the proposals, would not comply with the zoning. Eating and drink was contemplated in a couple of the proposals. Would not comply with the zoning without some changes, and we'll talk about how that could occur. So, given all this information, the City Council directed that we have the subcommittee come back and talk to the community. And that's what we're here for tonight. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation. So I'll turn it back to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Charlie. Very, very well done, very thorough, and we appreciate that and the work that staff put into the visuals as well. So I think in the interest of making sure everybody kind of gets a turn if they're motivated to speak, maybe work that column, I'll work this column. The distribution's pretty even. That way we can each keep track of a...
We have separate microphones, right, that we
Yeah.
can pass around?
Okay. And a couple of things. We're going to start this by trying clarifying questions or specific questions first. It's going to be very hard to keep questions and comments separately because it's an important topic and people have strong feelings perhaps. But if there's anything you heard that you want clarified, this is the time for that. And when you get to comments, you're talking about your ideas or your concerns, my suggestion would be go ahead and stand, state your first name, your last if you want, but your first name, and whether or not you're a resident. And we don't push that too hard in the city council meetings, but in this case, if you're a resident, you're one of the co-owners of this property. So I think it's important, and you have that option. We'd like you to state whether or not you're a resident. So the reason I say stand is you might have like-minded people that want to know who's asking the question and collaborate with you or catch up with you later or something. So if you stand, people know who wants to go blueberry picking, like they want to go blueberry picking, and they can spot you and catch you after in the hallway or something. It helps with that to identify who's speaking. So with that, we'll start here and go back and forth. Do we have clarifying questions for the staff? Okay.
I got it.
Okay, yeah, so we'll do it like that, so we're,
Thank you.
Price is right.
I'm a little confused. When you showed the slide of the zoning that implements the general plan, I don't know if you're able to go back to that one, it talked about on the Northwest Open Space Community Park, historical and a nature center as being two of the uses, specifically. Historical area and nature center as uses that are included.
Can I answer that real quick? I think it's a good question.
And then
Let me answer that one, and then we'll take a follow-up one.
And then, at the end, I haven't finished my question, so thank you. At the end, it then goes back and says that that's not permitted. So I need some clarification from Mr. View, if I may.
I'll answer it, Carrie, thanks.
I'm sure, but I would like it from Mr. View.
Okay.
Seriously.
Got it. The part of what we're trying to illustrate here, okay, and I think while we did a great job of technically doing this, maybe a little bit of a colloquial summary of the conflict that I think Carrie just highlighted, which I appreciate. It's an on-point question, which is, hang on a second, didn't I read the general plan says you can do this, and then I read the general plan says you can't do this, and then the zoning says you can do this, but the master plan says you can't do this, and then something else says that's exactly what we want here? Yeah. That's part of the problem. Part of the problem is that if you go back to 1990 and you look at how this was originally zoned, you could kind of see from those original general plan and zoning designations that somebody back then had in mind that this was going to be a bunch of soccer fields. Okay, and all the zoning language kind of reflects that. Okay, and even when we went back and changed, what you're looking up here is the parks and recs element. The general land use designations for community park weren't updated to reflect that. And even as the city council went through and made policy decisions, the two policy decisions that they showed, one said it was a policy in place to do overnight camping there. Then you see another policy 15 years later that said, oh, no, this is going to be a passive open space. All the while, the general plan and the zoning has never been changed, so it thinks it's going to be soccer fields. So, Carrie, I think you're right. It's not a confuse. If you're confused, everybody's confused. It's not so much that why don't these things say the same thing? They don't. And that's part of the reason we wanted to get together and take a pause, is because whether we want to move forward with this use, that use, or the other use, to keep ourselves in a legally safe and sound position, we need to make sure these documents align. Whatever it is that we choose to go out there as a community, we need to make sure that these things all say the same thing about what is supposed to go and be supported by the law.
Charlie, do you feel there's anything to add to that as far as?
I just want to clarify, this is, as the Mayor Pro Tem indicated, this is the general plan parks and recreation element. It is not zoning, so it's a little different from a regulatory point of view, but this is the language we're referring to, and I would consider the description accurate. We have inconsistencies throughout our policy and regulatory documents.
And specifically, Harry, what you just pointed out specifically is absolutely accurate. The general plan right here that we're looking at, the Parks and Rec element, says, hey, how about some historical areas, some nature centers, right? And then if you go to the zoning for this property, it specifically prohibits passive parks, learning. So yes, they are in conflict. They don't match. Okay. Questions on this side of the room? Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Who's going to pay for this?
You might begin in the weekend.
Who's going to, I've been a resident since 1971. Who's going to pay for this new, whatever it turns out to be?
Yeah. So question one is, who's going to pay for whatever this ends up being? Thanks for asking that, because I think sometimes we come to these meetings, and I know before I got super involved in the city council, maybe I saw it this way too, but I knew what I wanted, and I never stopped to ask about how much it was going to cost and who was going to pay for it. I think that, so the staff mentioned that we have some funds left over from the not 90, but 2010 bond measure that we could use for some of these improvements, certainly not all of them. I think it's fair to say that if we had all the money we wanted to, soccer fields would have been out there 25 years ago. Part of the reason it's remained a passive space is because we haven't had the funds to make the improvements that the community wanted. Funds have been identified for the Petite Village. But in terms of some of the other uses that you see here for the other things that were proposed, funding sources weren't necessarily identified. So when someone came and said, hey, I want to operate a winery over here, and oh, by the way, if you grant me permits to do that, I'm willing to pay for all of these other improvements that you want but don't have the money for, that gets our attention. Or if the camping guys say, come in, hey, we'd like to build the Petite Village, we'd like to take care of some of these other things in town if you let us do some of these uses. So I don't think all of that has kind of been answered in terms of who pays for what, but I do want to say that just for wanting it, if we all decided here today that the city should operate whatever we choose out there, that doesn't mean it happens tomorrow, because it doesn't mean that we necessarily have the funds to do it, and we haven't had them for decades.
I'm talking as a taxpayer in San Juan, because I know that San Juan is one of the highest leasing properties in southern Orange County, maybe next to Irvine. When you lease out property, like for the soccer fields, or there's supposed to be a skate park there at one time. And I know there's the Alzheimer's building, which is there. And that's the property you're talking about, right? Right there, between there and
Silverado?
The winery. The winery, yes.
Okay.
Is that the property you're talking about?
The one we're talking about tonight is, between Silverado and the Swanner House is the area we're talking about.
Okay. Also, what I would like to say is, when I moved down here, there was two things that I was told. That they weren't supposed to build too close to the riverbed because of the 30-year flood, which, thank God, we have not seen. Also, are these shifting? Is that in zoning? Because I know when they built the housing over here, those hills shifted.
Yeah, so let me answer that quickly, and then let someone else take a question. The first question was, are there issues with doing anything out here given how close it is to the riverbank there? For the most part, no. So if you kind of picture this is the piece of property on our side, the city's side of the railroad tracks, on the east side of the railroad tracks. The creek is on the other side of the railroad tracks. So there's another big piece of property over there, and sometimes people think that that's the Northwest Open Space, and it's not. It's private property. It is dealing with some significant creek erosion issues. This property largely is not. Brian, you want to take one from over there?
Will it affect the equestrian, the riding trail?
Will what we do here affect the riding trails? It very much could. It depends on what we do. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, sir. Why don't you let her get you the mic, just so
Jeff, a San Juan resident for 37 years. My question is, what was what will the outcome be of the 4-to-1 favorable vote for red tail?
Theoretically, the 4-to-1 vote put red tail in an exclusive negotiating arrangement with the city. There was a moment of pause where there was a recognition about some of the conflict in the zoning and general plan language that you've heard tonight. and also perhaps a little bit of sentiment that there was some concern and some confusion in the community, and that's when we said, hey, let's pause, let's put a couple of workshops in the mix and put that broader public consultation process on the front end. So technically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but technically we sit in the same place, but we have Patuitum and the exclusive negotiating with Redtail in neutral, sort of parked in neutral, while we get some feedback on the front end from the public.
Yeah, and I would add the context that we had 3 people show up to ask us to evaluate their proposals, right? One pulled their application, Metro, with the soccer fields. They didn't even come to the meeting to present, okay? The second one, kind of in the meeting and a little bit previous, recognized that it might not be financially viable as it had been proposed. And so there was really only one proposal left to look at. And I think we were pretty clear in the meeting that by exclusive negotiating, that's the term we were presented with by staff, we were really more saying, we're willing to do some due diligence and listen. It's the only proposal that's really outstanding, and we'd like to learn some more about it. I would say that was the emotional sentiment of the City Council. It definitely wasn't a 4-1 vote that said, we're ready to do this, let's go with that. That was never expressed by anybody on the City Council.
By the way, just briefly, and with regard to the principals at Metro and the notion of soccer fields in particular, they pulled back from the evening because they sensed some angst in the community and didn't know that they wanted to be a part of it at that time. So there's still the notion out there, and we're looking forward to hearing ideas once we cover all the basic questions. But their reasons for stepping back were not that they didn't think it was viable or that they didn't think people would want soccer fields. They just sensed a little bit of angst in the community and thought, we're going to back off for now. So I realize now we're not quite even distribution, so we may do 2-1, but why don't you go ahead? Why don't we go ahead here?
Go ahead.
I'll go there. I got it. Here,
Thank you. Is this working? Oh, okay. My name is Sharon Allen. I'm a 45-year resident of San Juan Capistrano. I've raised 2 boys here. I had a foster daughter for 2 years. We've been very active in the community in the past. My husband is a former Architectural Board of Review chairman, a former traffic commissioner, and I've been real involved in the open space, as has my husband Jim, and we've walked and we went through the rain to go door to door to petition for the open space. We worked with Yvonne Heckscher, Doug Nash, Carolyn Nash, a lot of old-time people from the council that are not with us any longer, are not in the area. But we feel very strong that you would consider the Red Tail project. We have no personal connection to that company other than that we visit their facility and we belong to 3 camping clubs. We know how hard it is to find a camping place at our local state campgrounds in this area. It's next to impossible. You almost have to be a military person or put in advance for 6 months to a year. And we know firsthand that this facility is also in the city of Buellton near Solvang, which is also a horse community. When we saw this was being connected to the name of Bathgate, which is an old family in the area, I go, wow, I'm sure she cares about this area because she's lived here for generations with her family. I don't know how to explain to you. I don't want you to think I have any personal gain about this, but we do utilize their facility. We do belong to 3 different groups that camp. And at first, they didn't want to go to this particular campground in Buellton because it was far away. We went there in May, ironically. We were on the road for 30 days almost, and we stayed at Indian Casino Resort Campgrounds at Black Hawk near Yosemite. We've been all over the country in our motorhome, and you cannot find a facility other than perhaps Pachanga, which is an Indian resort RV, that is as nice as the one in Buellton. The facilities are fabulous. While we were there, they had a big room, bigger than this, that young people were using for their prom. You can be in every economic phase of the community and still be able to afford to visit this great thing. And we're a horse
you.
community, and these people need a place to stay when they bring their horses
Thank you.
and their motorhomes. Thank you.
So keep your hands up for a second. But if you don't have a specific question about general plan and zoning, because shortly we're going to transition to ideas, opinions, but in terms of a crystal clear question about the presentation and what's allowed or something in that realm, leave your hand up. Okay.
My name is Tina Claire, and I'm a San Juan resident, 5 years only. So I have a confusing question, or I'm confused, and I think sometimes people are confused. When you say open space, I understand the specific purchases that we did on those 2 times, but a lot of people confuse open space with our ridge lines. And I think they think that once we're making these decisions for this type of open space, it includes everything that we can see that's green and not built on. So can you just answer the question of how that's separate? What is the future for for ridge lines, so that we're not looking at that and being afraid of that happening? And then I have a comment.
Yeah, if you're similarly confused, they're 2 very different things. Ridge lines, whether it's city property or private property, the ridge line laws, an ordinance said you can't build on the ridge line. So when you look around the rim and you see nothing built up there, that's the reason for that. The ownership's irrelevant, and really most zoning considerations beyond that are irrelevant because you can't put anything up. Other clarifying questions?
And my name is Robert. I've lived here for over 50 years. I'm a homeowner. I've got 2 questions. One is, how many acres are we talking about for the Petite Village? Total acres.
I'm going to let staff, may we start with what's the total acreage of the Northwest open space?
It's a lot more.
There's different assessments. The usable area that we're talking about is, I think we opened it about 37, initially it was about 25. The overall property is, I think, 70-some acres, but you have, as we talked earlier, you do have the creek, you have other habitat areas, other restricted areas, so the workable area is much smaller. And I did look to our Assistant Director for Public Works regarding the Petite Village Park itself. It's about 3.3 acres.
Okay, and that's the Petite Village, that's the historical area that you're talking about?
That's what we're calling, yes, the Petite Village, the Native American park area.
So that's going to be less than 10% of the total?
Yes, about 10% of the usable. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have another quick question?
No, those 2 satisfy
I got
that
you.
part.
Gentlemen.
My name is Patricia. I'm not a resident, but I have 2 dogs in this race. One, I'm president of the California Cultural Resource Preservation Alliance, and under that, my question is, why are you not considering the fact that this entire open space contains all that's left of the Petite Village archaeological site and burials? The court... A large portion of this area was destroyed for the Junipero Serra High School, and the Native Americans cannot go there to visit the graves of their ancestors or to hold ceremonies because they're buried under the athletic fields. All they're asking for is this small area where they can have ceremonies and also they can give to the community with educational programs and recreational performances, storytelling, and so forth. So, and my other dog in the race is I'm a member of the Pituitum Committee. Thank you.
So, hey, the truth is that, am I on here?
You're on.
The truth is, this whole separating the questions from the comments always trips us up in council too. So the reason it's so important to set the base of any confusion about the presentation, the number of acres, what's allowed, and so forth, is so from there you can put your ideas and your opinions within that context and then deliver us your opinions and your ideas and your suggestions. So I just one more time, clarification. I understand, but it had nothing to do with the presentation. And I'm not. Your comment was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. We just want to formally transition. We want to get past the fundamental questions, not the questions that are part of an opinion. With all due respect, your question was part of an opinion. So but it was still part of an opinion. Look, you know what? We do the same thing every other Tuesday night, and we have the same little back and forth on the dais. And this is why it's difficult. So I want to be crystal clear, and then we're going to move over to opinions. To be clear, your opinions can include some questions, so have that peace of mind. But I want to know if there's anything unclear about acreage, purchase price, general zoning. Anything there? Specific questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
While we're
You don't get to ask questions, Ben.
Yeah, is it specific?
I have a specific clarification, which is the revised park concept that was shown here and presented to the council is actually 1.2 acres. The original park concept was 3.3, and we apologize for the confusion.
So the Patutum is quite a bit smaller acreage-wise. Go ahead.
Hi, Gail, a resident. This is just a yes or no question. Had the vote, I know it was 4 councilmen saying yes, and you asked for the step back. Had it been unanimous, would this have gone through and entered into the next stage?
I don't think so. I can't, no, I would suggest not.
Okay.
It was really part of the zoning-related confusion and some general sense coming back from a variety of directions that the community had concern and had some confusion, and so we said, hey, let's step back.
Well, and the other question is, in the original agreement, or the original general plan, it says to prevent commercial development. This is a commercial development we're talking about, this red tail thing, correct?
Well, so let me answer that question, because I think that kind of gets to the crux of what a lot of the comments have been about. Is can you go up to the original, the first bond that was used to purchase this property? This is there's some language in here that's really, and this answers your first question too. And this is going to answer a few of the most recent ones. Even the question comment, I think we'll get to a little bit. The language you're referring to, look in the fourth line. Okay, we're going to save these lands from potential residential and commercial development. Okay, and then 3 words later, what does it say we're going to do to it? Develop them. Okay, so I'm going to read it for those of you who can't see it. It says that we're going to do this, we're going to buy these properties in order to save these lands from potential residential and commercial development, and to develop youth, senior, and other community facilities. So let me finish real quick, and I'll get you a chance to follow up with your question. We're sitting right now on land that was purchased with this bond measure, with this exact language in place. So I want you to reflect a little bit on what happened here, okay? This property was purchased. It was originally, let me finish. Let him finish.
Let him finish, Gail. Let him just finish.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you a chance, Gail. I'll give you a chance. Okay. The question then, okay, is let's say the building that we're sitting in right now. Okay, is this open space? Well, that's debatable, but legally it is. It's part of a community park zone, and this building is open space, and I think everybody would agree that, you know what, we came in, we purchased this land, and we developed youth, senior, and other community facilities right here, okay? And Gail brings up a really good point, which is, hey, you know what, this is run by the city. Not exactly. It's run by the Boys and Girls Club. Or I could say, if we go to our eastern open space, we also have a commercial development that many people in the community would argue is a development that serves our youth and senior and other community facilities in the riding park, also not operated by the city. So I don't think it's a black and white issue. I think it's a gray issue. That's part of the reason we're trying to slow this down and have a richer conversation, because if you said, is a campground a community facility for youth and seniors? Well, some people would say yes, and other people would say no. If they collect $1 or if it doesn't look like grass, then it's not. And I think both of those sides probably are valid to some degrees, but it's a grayer issue, I think, than some people might consider. Fair, okay. And this kind of goes to your question about if it was 4-1, and also your question comment. I want to say this clearly about the Patutum Village, okay? if you believe, I think there's might be a misunderstanding that thinks because the city council didn't unanimously decide to move forward with the Petitton Village at the meeting recently, that in some way they don't support or reflect what we're trying to do with the Petitton Village. That is flatly not right. That is not where the emotional and the dialogue was on the city council. What we're trying to do is this, I haven't been on the city council very long, but when I talk to neighbors, okay, one of my big goals when I was running for city council is to keep us from getting sued. Okay? And part of our concern was not whether or not we should or shouldn't move forward with the Petitton Village. That wasn't the issue. The issue was, if we do that, we had members of the community saying, if you don't do what we want out there, we're going to sue you. And frankly, as you just saw illustrated on these slides, the laws are a jumble mess of spaghetti, and there was plenty of legal liability if someone didn't agree with exactly what we were doing, how we were doing it. So what we said is, no one stood up and said, we don't want to do the Petitton Village anymore. What they said is, let's pause, get the laws straight, so that when we do it, it's legally defendable and it's done in the right way. So I just want to clarify that, because there was no discussion among the city council about saying, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, the village or some of these other things. It was really just pausing to make sure that what we do end up doing is done correctly. Go ahead, Brian.
Let's go here and look for some fresh faces.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Rain Cohan. I've lived here since 1987, our family. We're up a little bit below J. Sarah, so this area is kind of close to us. This goes back for me to the basic, referencing what Councilwoman Ferguson asked. If you have so many disagreements, or a few disagreements between all of the things you flashed before us, I don't see how we can have any discussion on any of this till you fix all that. Don't you have to get that all coherent and cogent and consistent before you can make any decisions? I don't see how you can go ahead with any of this. And I would think the legal would be working on this and would be giving it back to you and saying, okay, it's consistent, this is what's allowed, what's not allowed, now go ahead. I think you have the cart before the horse.
So my immediate reaction is to be a little cynical and say, hey, this is government. we can do it. But the truth is, that's part of tonight. As the council looks to dig in and think about what may need to be amended or fixed or tweaked, what is the feedback from the community in terms of what's their thought about what open space means to them and what's an acceptable use? So that's part of it, right? It really is. Other comments?
Like the simple example would be this, Ren. If you said, Troy, Brian, go fix it tonight, get all of those matched up, and then come back to us. Okay, should we make all of them match the land use general plan? That's soccer fields. Or should we make them all match the mission statement that the city council put out that said they want trails? Or should we make it all match equestrian? Or should we, and that's what this process is, to try to say we can clean it up, but not until we decide what it is that we want there, and then we can make it all match.
Don't we have to vote on that? Yeah.
No.
You give us all the ideas and we vote on how we want.
Well, it could end up there.
Yeah, or legal should have done this a long time ago. Presenting it was a problem.
Great.
Right.
I'll get you.
Miyuyam. I am Chairwoman Teresa Romero of the Wenatchee Band of Mission Indians, a Hashima Nation. I have some comments reserved for later, but I do have a couple of questions for you right now with regards to using this space for soccer fields. I'd like you to look over your left shoulder and tell me how many people are using the soccer fields out there right now that we have right there. And you're talking about adding additional soccer spaces. And this young lady here talked about camping and saying that it's really difficult to find a space. There's reserve throughout the country, blah, blah, blah. However, do you know how many spaces are dedicated to the Hashima people in San Juan Capistrano? 0. Now, I am not a resident of San Juan Capistrano for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Our families have been here for 12,000 years. I am trying my best not to become emotional because I want to state some comments, but ideally my ultimate question is, if and when we get to a position where we're voting once again, and it is in favor of the village, whether it's embedded in these other projects or what have you, and it is a successful positive movement vote, What are your guys' position with regards to finding us here in the same place again 2 years after that? Because 3 years ago, we stood at City Hall, and there was a vote that was 4-1 in favor of the village and to move forward. And yet here we are again, discussing and taking more ideas. That doesn't leave a whole lot of confidence for me in our newly elected representatives. So I will reserve my comments, but I would at this point like to ask everybody in this room, Native and friends of the Ahoshiman, to stand so you have an opportunity to see the support for this village.
We can do that.
So I think it's important because you called this meeting to get community input and get support and to find out what it is. I'm hoping that the nearly 95% of people that just stood gives you a clear indication of what we want. And if you have any questions for the tribe or the committee or anybody else that's related to the tribe, you can contact us. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, and that goes for any resident in Capistrano. I want to also mention that when we spoke at the City Council office City Hall 3 years ago, there was actually a number of other cities that were willing to donate their grant money to support this village. And we never heard from the city again with regards to what does that mean? How will that work with maintenance and so forth? So the other areas within Orange County recognize the value that we have as the only indigenous tribe of Orange County. I would hope that because Petitum is our mother village, where our tribe sprung up from, that would be first and foremost on your guys' agenda to support when things like this come up. And I will reserve the rest of my comments for later.
Thank you. And actually, so I think we've now probably officially transitioned out of, which I think it might just be for the best. Well, no, you can still ask a question. No, okay, I'm going to have you restate in a second, but we're now at a point, it's 20 of, we can stay all night, that's no problem, but we've gone quite a while with clarifying questions. I think we're now at a point where let's just get it out there, let's talk about what you envision, what the complexities of this idea or that idea would be. So let me come back to you. So with that in mind, get your comments and or questions or a mix of the two ready, and let me come back to you to specifically the question again.
So if the vote is overwhelmingly in favor of moving forward with Petitum Village, whether it's embedded in this project or another project, what are you guys going to do to prevent this from happening again with regards to overturning it and saying, let's look at the community and see what they want again in 2 years?
Well, nothing. To be clear, nothing's been overturned. It's been paused.
Okay, so speaking from a Native perspective, that's one and the same.
I understand, but the distinction is it wouldn't have to go back to a new vote. Okay, and for the record, I was very much opposed to that. But it doesn't have to go back through. It's always difficult to predict the future, but it would not have to go back for a new vote.
I'm asking for your personal agenda, what you would like to see.
I'd like to see it built. I'd like to see it built.
What actions are you going to take to prevent this from happening again? If the vote is successful, if it's 4-1 or a majority or whatever, what are you going to do, and you, Mayor Pro Tem, to prevent this from happening again and another pause?
I'm going to let the Mayor Pro Tem speak for herself in a moment. As for me, it's everything in my power. You want to comment on that before we move to comments?
Yeah, I do, and I want to, please don't take this the wrong way, but I want to just speak really directly about your comment/question, okay? All 5 of the council members who are on the dais right now have spoken in support of and in favor of the Petitum Village, and I feel like I've said this a couple times, but it's not getting through. And so let me, I've heard all, well, okay, so, No. Let me finish my thought, okay? Because I actually think this is really important. What you just did was visually very illustrative, okay? We get it, but I think that there's a sense right now, okay? I think there's a sense that there's something that this city council is doing to intentionally stall or delay your park from being built. And the question that you just asked is reflective of that dynamic. When what I'm trying to make as clear as I can is, if this is going to happen, if we just said 6 weeks ago or whenever it was, let's just move forward with that. Again, I don't understand the contention here. I'm trying to be as supportive as I can, and it feels like you want to just come at me when I'm trying to explain to you how we're trying to get done what we want to get done. Okay, but here's the facts. We're trying to put your park on sound legal footing. If this isn't built in 3 years and we move forward and approved it, and someone sues the city as we go to start construction and say, you can't do that, it's in strict violation of the zoning code. Okay? We're trying to get to a place where the process that we all want to go is legally defendable and sound and can move forward. Okay? Again, I don't know what else I can say to try to express my support, but if this is the, I don't know what else to say. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sir.
My name is Ashley. I've been in the community over 10 years. Two questions I have is there a financial analysis of each of the programs and like contentions that are going on and proposals? Is there a financial analysis and impact to the city to develop the land and then maintenance of that moving forward? So that's the first part. And then I have...
Swap mics. She wants to give me back mine. So the question he asked was, has there been financial analysis performed to look at the potential financial contributions from the different proposals or potential costs associated with the different proposals? And the answer to that is yes. The proposals that came, and I'm going to do this off the top of my head, but the short answer is the Petitton Village has a cost associated with it, and not only for construction but ongoing maintenance. Some of the other proposals that have come in have been revenue positive towards the city, and I think there's varying levels of confidence in those numbers because some of them have been brought by the applicants themselves, and part of this whole moving forward due diligence, looking at some of these things, would be a more robust due diligence on our part. But whether it's glamping or the winery that was proposed or some of these other things, they were offering to lease the land from the city, which would be a net inflow to the city, and others were true costs to the city.
Okay. And then, is this on? Yeah. And then the other part of the question is, from a law enforcement standpoint, has there been a positive, negative influence on crime and other influences like that, and a traffic study for the same area?
I'm not sure. I want to try to answer the question, but I'm not sure I totally understood it. You mean related to all the different proposals?
Yeah, like on the, has the sheriff come in and looked and said, this is where we're at on crime in this area, and by putting...
If you did this, it would go up, or if you did this, it would go down.
Up or down, and then the same thing with the traffic, because Juanapero Serra is a nightmare if anything happens on the freeway.
I think the short answer to that, and staff might throw something at me, but I think the short answer to that is largely no, that any of these applications haven't gone through what would be a thorough environmental study that would evaluate those sorts of things.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Let's take one from this side, and I'll come back to you.
Kathy Hooper, 42-year resident. I moved here as a child. I just want to thank the council and staff for giving the citizens of San Juan an opportunity to have these meetings. When I sat at the meeting and I had looked at the agenda item before it came to council, it was very upsetting for those of us who had worked so hard to get those measures passed. And a whole bunch of them are sitting here, and I won't name names because they don't want to be, like placed on the old people list. But we worked really hard, and the citizens own that property, and they have the right to say what goes out there, and you guys are doing that by doing the workshops, so thank you very much.
And what do you want to see out there? At some point, we got to get some ideas tonight.
Go ahead.
Got a question for staff.
Yeah.
Bear with me. Alvin Eric, 30 years resident. I know there's been confusion supposedly about all.
Yeah, closer to your mouth. You have to get right in
There's
there.
confusion about all this, and I think you could reterm it as, it's not confusion, it's more of a delusion. You can pretty much do anything you want out there, it seems like, the way you're talking. You've said it pretty much. You can do anything you want out there. And I don't think that's what the people voted on. I know I didn't vote on it. I wanted open space. So I'm asking, and I think a majority of the people here, you're jumping way ahead of things. If staff could send out on our water bill, it's very simple, and ask, do you want open space developed, or do you want it open space? It's simple. Don't dilute it with a whole bunch of high rises or dog parks. Do you want it open space? Or do you want your open space developed?
So the follow-up question to that would be, because I think everybody in the room and everybody in the city would say, we want open space, open space. Okay, but the response would be, but let me just clarify, does the Petitum Village count as developing it, or is that open space? Right, and they would say, it's open space. What are you talking about? It's the original open space. That is open space. And someone else would say, you're building things on it. You're building a parking lot, bathrooms. So it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But I don't disagree with you. I think it's a good idea to try to say, when you say open space, what do you see in your mind when you say open space? And other people see open space and they see this building and kids playing and shooting hoops. So it can be different to different people.
I did promise Tom, and I'll come back.
I'm going to get you.
I got him here. She's got you behind.
Sir, right behind you. Oh, thank you. Tom Rebar, long-term resident, former council member. My question, I had a question earlier, and that is the thoughts from staff and from council, the thoughts are that you're going to have to do a zone change in order to accommodate the Putnam Village. And if you do a zone change, is that new zone going to allow for the possibility of clamping, which I'm so opposed to, so I can't even express it. But so is council going to do an end run on this and potentially allow that clamping zoning at the same time that maybe it would clear up some of the inconsistencies to allow Putnam? So that's a question, and then a statement that during my council year we built the Los Rios Park, one of our accomplishments, and we had numerous discussions on building the village on phase 2 of Los Rios. So it would be nice to do the village in phase 2 of Los Rios, and also a village in the northwest, so that our tourists could enjoy the history and the culture of those that preceded us in this valley.
So let me, I think maybe that question might we'll get everybody's perspective a little bit. I don't think there's anything that's going to end up where cleaning things up to accommodate Petitum Park somehow opens the door to commercial camping for profit. I don't. As far as the mechanics of that, I mean, your thoughts. I mean, by the mechanics, okay, here's what I mean. I'm saying what it would take to clean up and accommodate Petitum would not by extension enable a commercial camping development, I don't think. Am I wrong?
Well, it would let me respond.
Sure. No, I was getting to you.
Yeah, because first of all, let me ask the direct nature of your question. Is the city council trying to do an end run, allow Petitum Village, and thereby rezone it all for camping? Definitively and absolutely no. Okay, but let me talk about the nuance of what the question that you just asked. Okay, we've got uses out there right now, okay? We're concerned because, as Carrie pointed out very early in the conversation, there's very clear language that suggests that the Petitum Village isn't a legal use out there. We can change that. We can make it a legal use, okay? Guess what else isn't legal out there? Now I'm going to get in trouble with staff. Beer and wine sales. Okay? What does the winery do? Okay, is the dog park legally zoned out there? Debatable. It depends on what you call a dog park. Okay, and so part of what we need to do is this isn't just about the Petitum Village. It's about looking at that parcel and saying we probably need to create a specific plan or some special zoning to reflect that this is a special piece of property, right? And I think that everybody's in consensus. I'm going to say this one more time for you, Mr. Romero. Everybody's in consensus that a part of that plan is going to include the Petitum Village, appropriately and legally zoned, and also a dog park. And also probably the winery. No one's tearing it down. No one's asking us to do that, okay? So these things that are currently outside of the legal zoning, we can write a special zone for that property that includes the Petitum Village, the winery, the dog park, and question mark, which is why we're here tonight, because there's other land there, and we didn't want to do this 4 times. So let's find out what we're doing with the other land, other than the use that we already all agree that we're trying to get out there, and the uses that we already have out there that we love. Let's make those legal, and then in that process, try to create a zone that doesn't make whatever we're going to do next illegal, and try to decide a little bit of that in advance. Now, if everybody came out tonight and said, Tom, oh, this is great. Let's do the Petitum Village and everybody's in support of glamping and let's wrap that around the other property. Let's go. Then yeah, we could do that. We could do a specific plan with Petitum Village, rezone it so winery works and do glamping. That's great. But that's not where the city is. The city is a little bit mixed. They all want the Petitum Village. Nobody's arguing that. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants the winery and dog park to stay. The question is, what do we do with the rest of the property? And that's where I think this healthy debate is happening.
So we have a couple that's been waiting very patiently. So go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Marlene Draper. I'm joining Kathy as the old members here because I was chairman of San Juan Citizens for Open Space, the group that worked tirelessly to get this area open space. And the reason this community center is here is because that is what we told people when they voted for this. We explained, we worked for about a year holding community meetings, going into people's homes, explaining that we would have 2 parcels. This would be active recreation, senior center, community center, and then the Northwest open space, knowing we did not have enough funds. It was going to be, at that point, open space. I am in full agreement with the Native American park there. It is very important. It was not discussed in the original bond. However, I really think anything that we do on that property, the citizens own that, and if we move to do something with a commercial venture, that is wrong. It goes against the will of the people and what we fought for so hard and what we citizens paid for, purchased, and we own it. And no commercial venture should be there, in my opinion. So I think
Did she cover you? We'll come back to you.
Want me to wait?
Okay.
Mayor, can we take this one up here? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go here.
Yeah, it's Warren, 33 years in San Juan. The last question Ms. Draper raises is one of the things I was going to inquire about. Has anybody from the city gone back and checked the original publicity that was put out at the time, not only in the voting brochures, but in the newspapers and commentary, to figure out what people were actually voting on at the time? One of the things that Supreme Court always looks at when they're interpreting initiatives and so on like that is what was said about it at the time was being voted upon. Has anybody in the city gone back and even checked all the original stuff, including the publicity and so on?
The oldest drawings that I've seen, and this was from years ago, because I worked with the Vermeulens over on this property on some stuff, and so we spent some time going through all of this original language stuff because they were involved in potentially one of the lands that were going to be acquired, had mapped out soccer fields there, okay, which is why no commitments were made to do that, but that's why I think you see the general plan and the zoning from way back then showing community park. But I think that I think to Marlene's point, the communications to residents around what was going to happen with this one were much more particular, finite, and specific, where the Northwest Open Space was a little bit more like, these are some things that could go out there, and the community park had a whole bunch of uses that could go out there, and so people weren't hammering the city council, say, get specific, get specific. I think if you pinned them down at the time, they would have said it's going to be a bunch of grass and a bunch of kids playing, won't that be special? But let's worry about that later, let's focus on this one right now.
Hello, Nathan Banda. Ancestors been here for over 12,000 years, as Chairwoman Romero mentioned, and I echo what her and some other folks mentioned tonight as far as open space. My particular involvement in this, at the time I was sitting on the Cultural Heritage Commission and part of the committee working on this. I think a couple good points to point out on this particular project is that this is one project that all three factions came together to talk and build and communicate and say their wishes on what they wanted at this particular park. I hear other people talk about, you know, as Chairman Romero echoed about the lady talking about going camping. There's thousands of places to go camping all over the U.S. and it seems, and I understand that. I didn't interrupt you when you're speaking, so I please appreciate that. So, thank you. And we don't have any place to call home. Any place that we have to call home for ceremonies, we have to get a permit for. We have to pay for parking to get in. We have to ask either the county, the state. You know, there's other places that's private property that people would offer their property for us to go use. But when it comes down to come use it, we can't. You know, we can't have bear ceremonies. Haven't done that for years because it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of permits, takes money to do. And, you know, we all came together and we put our political stuff aside as the factions came together to develop this and come up with, you know, ideas and plans. And it was a healing thing for us at the same time. It was mentioned in the beginning when staff was reporting on some of the different uses, and there was a little chuckle in the room when you guys were talking about the conditional use permit and talked about cemeteries. There's cemeteries out there. Our ancestors are buried there. And when the committee got together and did this for a number of years, you know, we talked about what would be the lowest impact there, even if we did do a park and the disturbance out there. There's been reburials out there. We had to rebury people because of all the developments that happened in this town already, and we had to rebury them out there. So now we're going to do that again, depending on what you guys do or decide to do as a community. I think personally that, and I know that Troy, you kind of feel like you're getting beat up from the crowd and the back and forth. You mentioned that, and it's because we're frustrated. You know, we have 12 generations with my daughter. I'm 11th generation here, and we've been going out there with our spiritual leader Delia every other month. We've been going out to the north with open space and having ceremonies out there. I've been bringing my 22-month-old daughter. I don't know where she's out running around right now, but my 8-year-old daughter, my 17-year-old daughter that's been to ceremonies. But how many ceremonies have my 17-year-old daughter been to? A handful. You want to know why? Because we don't have a place to do it. How do we keep that culture? How do we preserve it when, you know, we understand that open space at the time it's commercialized out there by the ranch. We know that, but we were given that. This is the last little piece. When the committee first went out there and we had staff flag it, the size of it was not even bigger than a 3-car garage. And I said, we went out there and Carrie was there and we looked and we're like, and Rebecca Robles was there. She's been very instrumental in this. And we're like, my garage is bigger than this place. So we went back and we carved out a little bit bigger of a piece, 1.2 acres, I believe staff said. And, you know, this is it. This is it for us. This is it for our community. It's it for our tribal members. There's 1,941 tribal members, and we need a place to call home. And we want to educate people. We understand that some of this has to be amended in order to make that happen so you don't have any lawsuits. But the tribe is tired. Tribal members are tired. Our tribal brothers and sisters that aren't from our tribe, but they're our tribal brothers and sisters, they're tired. And we are here, and you can see when Chairwoman asked everybody to stand up, a good majority of the people are in support of this. And we're tired, and we are not going to go away. We will do everything in our power to make sure that this glamping doesn't happen, because it's just another layer of disrespect to our nation and to our people and future generations that there'll be glamping there. That's not what we want there. And you know what? We're gonna fight for the last little piece that we still have in our town. And you know, we have 265 villages in Orange County, and the one mother village that she mentioned is here. And we already had to move people. We had to move family members from J. Sarah and rebury them out there. And now you guys are gonna, act like, I mean, I appreciate the workshops, but we've done workshops. This Northwest Open Space for Platinum, we hosted many workshops. And the workshop that should be happening tonight is to amend this to make Petite happen and keep the rest of it open space so it can be utilized from the equestrian community as well and interface. Those are my comments tonight, and I hope you take that into consideration and remember the support that you have from this Native American community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Matisse.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jim Adam. I live on Hidden Creek Drive, which is about a block away from Northwest Open Space. I think this whole evening started with me, whether that's good or bad. Years ago, my family has lived here for a very long time. I have a business here, and we built some homes for our family. It's a family compound. Right next to Northwest Open Space. First of all, utmost respect for our Native Americans. Absolutely, Petite Village needs to be built, 100%. It needs to be built as soon as possible. Northwest Open Space. Now, I contributed to Northwest Open Space. My whole family did. What do we want? I went to the city years ago, and I said, listen, Northwest Open Space is a disaster. Something needs to be done. I had no intention of opening up a can of worms, but that's what happened. Something needs to be done there. Petite Village needs to be built there. But we purchased it, and the city has a need, and we can't leave it the way it is. We just can't. You talk about disrespect to the Native Americans. The way it sits is disrespectful. Now, if we need to do something there that enhances our community, so we need money. Everybody knows that. Our city needs money, okay? So we have to figure that one out. We need Petite Village, absolutely, okay? And then we need to do something for us as a community. That's what needs to be done in Northwest Open Space. I designed something, and somebody else designed something that would enhance Northwest Open Space, that would help Petite Village, that would give the city what they wanted, which is they need revenue. And I thought it was a happy marriage. I really did. I think something needs to be done. I think it needs to be beautified. I think the city needs money. I think Petite needs to be done as soon as possible. And I think we just need to come together, and just like Troy has said, and a lot of people have said, is let's do something together that we can be proud of on this property. The glamping idea is not a bad idea. It brings in a lot of revenue, okay? The winery that sits there is not a bad idea, okay? There's places that we can go now. Equestrian is not a bad idea. Gardens are not a bad idea. Agriculture is not a bad idea. There's so many things that we can do on this property that everybody would be happy with. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to do something a little bit backwards here, because I want this to kind of flow both ways. This would be helpful for me, okay? Nathan, I appreciated your comments. Nathan and our kids go to school. His kids probably pick on my kids. Am I right? Like you're picking on me tonight. But let me ask you a question real quick. Let's say Petite Village gets built, okay? And we've got this other property around it, okay? I'm going to do, this is so totally informal, but just bear with me for 2 seconds, okay? Those of you who stood up and said, I'm here because I'm part of the Native American either family or support group, okay? I just want you guys to raise your hands for just a second, and I'm not trying to exclude anybody else, but I'm literally just trying to understand this group's intents and ideas, okay? Nathan, okay, how many of you would support youth soccer fields at grass facilities on the balance of the property in addition to Petite Village? How many would think that would be acceptable? Okay, how many of you feel that the glamping would be acceptable? Okay, okay. So now here's what I need to hear. Do you see the problem, right? Because if that's the answer, right, then the Petite Village isn't a 1 acre or a 3 acre village. It's a 60 acre village. Okay. So hang on just a second. Okay, hang on a second. Okay. So what I want to hear now, and just some one-word answers, just really quickly, if I can do this. What, other than what's out there right now, which is, I think this is his point, is that there's beautiful open space and then there's dead orange trees, okay? You know, apart from what's out there right now and just saying we're just going to leave dead orange trees and perpetuate and never do anything with it, I want just some 1 or 2 word things to say, what, again, from the Native Americans who want the village out there, what are some things that you could see going around the village? Because I don't think you really think that it's going to be a 60 acre Native American village. What do you want to see there other than the village? This is just. So I just heard native plant life.
Native plants, absolutely. The pine trees that are indigenous, the oaks, the
native,
sycamores,
passive plantings.
the things that people make with these things.
Got it.
Having events there that highlight how we can use the things that we aren't going to see if we continue to plow them.
Okay, so hang on just a second, because this is actually really helpful. Okay. Okay.
Grossly inadequate for what's needed. First thing I want to hear you guys discuss is how big you are going to get in the village.
Let me finish this exercise and we'll go ahead and do that.
Well, connecting trails.
So trails, so native plants, trails. You said events. What sort of a venue do you see for having those events?
The limited focus that I see on the Juanino tribe in town is generally at the mission. And there are so many amazing things.
Let me be more specific with my question. Do you see like an amphitheater?
Not necessarily. I see a circle. I see things done and openly.
Casual, small.
Microphone, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna.
Well, the most important aspect of that whole area is spiritual. And when I go out there, and I've been going out there quite a bit, to sit under the oak tree, beautiful big oak tree, and it is the most amazing experience just to sit out there. And I get people to come out there and sit when we just sit and we listen, and I think we all need that. Everyone in this room needs that. We need that spiritual connection to the land, and we can have it out there.
I have
yeah, go ahead.
Richard Tunin, I'm a resident of San Juan, a concern about that. I go past Rieta Glen probably a dozen times a month, and I have yet to see 3 or 4 cars parked there. It's a beautiful area. There was quite a bit of money. There's several trees. There's every kind of tree you can think of, and an event center, but I'm not sure how much it's actually used.
Okay, so he said Riata Glen. He was referring to Riata Park out Ortega. Well, let me hear for the rest of the comments, okay?
And my real concern, my other question, and I didn't get a chance to do it, was this inconsistency that was brought up early between the general plan and the zoning plan. And I know Derek Reeve about 8 months ago brought up a resolution, and I guess it's being worked on to avoid these inconsistencies because it resulted in killing one hotel project downtown, and it's a critical issue, and it could be used in lawsuits in this project too if we don't resolve those inconsistencies.
Okay, as someone, I heard a comment back here about equestrian. How do you feel about equestrian uses on some of the surrounding outside of the Native American village if that was done? Yes? Is that a yes? Okay. Did you have a comment? Connecting up the equestrian trails. There are trails out there and there's trails next to there, but they don't connect right now because of the creek. Yeah. Yeah. You got it?
You know, Pamela Hayden, 40 years, San Juan resident. Oh, the thing is, I'm sitting here tonight and I hear what's going on, and it makes my heart feel badly, really, because we love San Juan so much, all of us, and I know a lot of you in the room. And to sit here and bite each other really irritates me. The Indian community we love, and I agree they should get Native Indian, I'm sorry. God, I'm an Irishman, I'm sorry. But the thing is what they're saying is legitimate. I mean, it's understandable. And then we need revenue in the city. There's a lot of choices come out, they take precedence to things that we would really like to do. But when you have a city that needs to go forward, if we're going to produce, and our young children are going to live here. I have grandchildren living here now, and my kids went to school here. I have doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs, and they're great kids, and I want them to live here and enjoy the city, and the way we're going to at it right now, I think is demeaning, and I think we should all sit back and think about what we're talking about right now. I'm sorry.
Could I just interject?
Go ahead.
We do not have decent streets. We cannot drive down our streets safely, even in my neighborhood. The city is sued every time they turn around. I have no offense against the Native Indians. I love them. I'm 8 nationalities myself, and I go to all the casinos that are run by the Indian nations. What are you going to do to get things to get paid for? Have a casino, or maybe consider a company that wants to put in something that's going to earn you money so you can have your Indian village. How's it going to be financed?
Okay. Actually, I've seen families of 4 fighting over plots of land. This is nothing. We're fine, but I appreciate the caution that we're all neighbors. We're all, this is all we're all co-owners in this land, and so we all have ideas. And I think so far we've all been pretty well behaved. It's my estimation, and we learned that we have 1 sober Irishman in the house. So there's that. I'm just kidding. Okay, back in the hat.
How you doing there? You gonna listen to me?
Good evening.
Comments.
And I have a question that would pertain to everybody in this room. And I've been here, I proposed a railroad to go around the property, and I realize that's probably never going to happen here because
it's all on the table tonight.
I know it's a minuscule thing, and it helps generate revenue for whatever comes into this thing. It's an addendum. But regardless of that, one of the things that was required of me to do this was I had to present a business plan to the community here in order to even be considered to walk in this door. And I watched Red Tail come in and have to present a proposal and had to come up with dollars and cents and everything else. I would like to see something from the Native community that would explain to us what is going to be built there and what they're going to actually do with it and how much it's going to cost, just like everybody else has to. And I think that that's missing in this because I know, but I have not yet seen it proposed out here as with the other things that were here. And I think that would go a long way towards a strengthened position of what you guys are trying to, and I say you guys in that manner, but in the general consensus that the people that want to build this Petitum Park, show us exactly what you're going to have out there, just like we had to. Just like I had to when I put my proposal forward. And I think it goes a long way to be clarifying exactly what is proposed, because I'm just seeing like we want to build this and it's open space. Can we get something from that?
Yeah, so while we go, Well, we move to the next question. Let me just address that briefly, because I don't think I get where that comes from, but it's not actually correct. The park has been approved. The park has some budget behind it. It has, a variety of iterations of what it would look like. The fact that it's caught up a little bit in this broader discussion doesn't mean that the park itself is obligated to have ideas or financial explanation to the rest of the acreage. It's a very small part of the acreage. I understand your broader theme, but they're not one and the same. They're different issues. It just happens that the park is caught up in this a little bit, and so as long as we're rechecking everything with folks, we're getting commentary on the park too.
I didn't mean to demean anybody.
I didn't suggest you were. No, I didn't suggest you were.
I'd like to see that
But that's not their obligation. There's been a determination that 2 to 3 acres would be used for the park. It's gone on for years now, and now we've got all these other acres.
use the whole 60 acres for it. I'd like to see a plan for it, and maybe that would be better than anything else you came up with in this room.
Well, that's so that's throwing an idea on the table. That's great. I'm serious. Who did we hand off to?
He's got it right here. But before we go to your question, you're coming up right now. If you've already had the microphone and spoken, could you do me a favor and put your hand down until everyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak? Because we're trying to get them to everybody, but if you've already spoken and somebody else hasn't had a chance to, we'll come back for seconds if we have more time. Sir in the black hat.
All right. Now, just a little history for you people out here. Keep calling us Indians. That was a Columbus thing. We're Native American, indigenous people. Now get that out of the way. Remember that, please. Don't call me an Indian.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, now my concern is hard for me to believe anything is going to happen when it comes to the Native Americans in this town, because we were promised things when they first went out there and destroyed our burial sites and built a high school on it. We begged, we fought, and I had to myself endure false statements. Like I go to the store and they were telling people out there saying, stop the casino, stop the casino. We never had any intentions to make a casino, but just like Trump, everybody hates him and they can't figure out why. You guys, all of a sudden you're telling us we're going to build a casino, and my sister was on the council at the time, and we had no intentions of making a casino. All we wanted is to preserve that sacred property, which was a gravesite. I was at a meeting where a guy got up and says, well, what's the difference from the cemetery that's up here on the Ortega Highway? It's just an old place. We can build on it. That's the kind of stuff that was going on. So if you're wondering why we get a little hot in the collar, well, that's one of the reasons. Getting tired of being told something, and then we never said that. Oh, I forgot all about that. Let's bring it up next meeting. Okay, well, the last time they said we were going to, that 100-year-old river flood area was promised to us, believe it or not. Yeah, you weren't here then. But when they were doing the J. Sarah thing, they said, well, we'll give you that land if you quit giving us a hassle. Never happened. J. Sarah, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to give you a special spot, and we're going to let you come here and have your ceremonies. We have never had one yet. Not one. In fact, we don't even get allowed to get on the property. Now we're going to get this little portion of land. There's 60 acres, and you want to give us, what, an acre and a half or 2 acres? And like the gentleman said here, what are the Indians going to do with them? Or the Native Americans, what are they going to do with them? We don't know, because we've never been given the property to do anything. Give us that, just give it to us, and let us worry about what we're going to do with it. All the good lands that we've had, sacred lands, you take it from us. You didn't even give us a chance. We didn't get the vote. You did. And most of the 30,000 people that voted weren't even here in the 1960s. I was here when there was only 1,100 people in this town. My grandfather was the Hashima chief back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, along with Clarence Lobo. When he passed away, Clarence Lobo took over. And when Clarence Lobo was done, now I have my niece, Teresa. She is now the consul. She is doing what she can for our people. I'm just a voice, guys. But the problem I'm having is you don't hear me. You don't hear the Hashiman people. You just go, oh, I hear you. And then you forget about us. So if this property here is going to actually be presented to us to do what we want, I'd like to see it in stone. I hear it, I don't see it written down. You guys have been promising us since 1983 to do something for the Hashman people. And like Nathan said, we have no property. San Juan Capistrano was built on a Hashman property. We have no rights to it. And I have people telling us, I don't even want to get into that. Anyways, my main problem is trust. We're all here, you to hear our voices, and we're going to listen to what you have to say, because I guarantee 3, 4, 5 months from now, this whole thing's going to come up all over again, and nothing's going to be done except for what you guys decide behind closed doors.
Yes. Carolyn Nash. I'd just like to say that the main reason, I've got it on.
Carolyn,
I got it on.
just hold it really close to your mouth.
Okay. The main reason that I think that the majority of us are here, other than for the people who are after the village, is that when the whole issue of what was going to be done with this property became public, it became very obvious that there were some commercial projects being considered. We made it very clear in 1972, when I was on the committee that formed the whole general plan, that that property was to be open space. And then subsequent to that, they passed the bond measure that saved it. All of us are more concerned about making it open space. And I think, even though there are lots of people here, there are 36,000 people in the city who would like to have a vote on what goes in there. And I think because of bond measure X, we are entitled to a vote. And I think the only thing that should be on the vote is yes or no. Do we want commercial in that property? I think most of us are afraid that that's how it's going to end up. We're afraid of that. We don't want that. And I think that we should be given the vote. I think the majority of the citizens in this community would gladly support the village for the people who are here. But in addition to that, we would like to have it open space. Doesn't mean you can't have facilities that support whatever activities you have that are for open space. It doesn't mean that. But we do need to have the vote to make sure that everybody has a say in that,
Thanks,
in the whole project.
Thanks. Can I respond to that? And maybe a little bit, I think the gentleman left, but I want to respond a little bit to that, because I think it's a little bit of the same sentiment, at least that I'm feeling and I want to express, is the gentleman who just left, and I wish he was still here, referred to us as you guys, and Brian and I are guys, it's true, and we are these guys, but I think it's important to... No, I know, but that's why I think it's important to understand that I've been on the city council for 6 months. Okay, it started at the beginning of the year. I was not on the city council. Okay, just to be clear, so I understand, this isn't about me, but I just wanted to understand how fluid this gets. Because sometimes I think that we look like the guys on the dais, and so we're all the same. And so we were the ones who 12 years ago said this, and 10 years ago said this, and 6 years ago voted on this. When those are totally different people with totally different thoughts, beliefs, convictions, different ideas, good, bad, but they're just totally different people. And so I just want to make perfectly clear so that you can have some context. Okay, when the city council decided that they wanted to go out to bid and solicit proposals for the Northwest open space, okay, that wasn't this city council. It's important for context, okay? And in fact, just to be clear, even though Brian was on the council, frankly, he voted against going out for the proposals, okay? So this city council, the one that you're talking to tonight, or at least these members of the city council, we were put into a position, okay, where people were coming to us with proposals that had been formally requested by the previous city council because they wanted to do one of these things here. We needed to respond to those things, right? Our willingness to better understand, imagine the scenario, and again, get to litigation or however you want, imagine the scenario where the city council said, spend a bunch of money, show us all your proposals, we're really interested. And then we say, you know what, actually, we don't even want to look at it. Okay, to some degree, we have some due diligence to understand, well, we said we were going to look at it, we're going to look at it. And I think that willingness to follow through on a solicitation made by a previous council has been interpreted as, we want this project, we want to move forward with this, And that explicitly is not the case, okay? We guys are different guys at different times, and we're trying to do what's right for the community, but I just want to be clear that the actions of a city council 6 months ago, they're not even the same people that you're talking to tonight, and in 2 years or 4 years or 10 years from now, they won't be us either, it'll be somebody else. All we can do as elected officials is do what we feel is right by you guys in the window in which we serve. I can't be accountable for promises that were made 3 years ago. All I can be accountable is for the commitments that Brian and I make to you in our term.
Go ahead. We're going to go back here for a minute.
Hi, my name is Carrie. I'm a resident since 1974. The village has already been approved, and there are funds allocated for it. And so this goes along with what you just said, that this was put forward commercially a council previous. So we can put a stop, perhaps, on that and move forward with the village, with the funds, one step at a time. Why are we mixing these commercial ideas into it? And some of the commercial ideas, really most of them, do not blend well with the native village. They don't even blend well. They are an insult to it. So why don't we just move forward with what has already been agreed upon? And then perhaps in the future, after finally that the Putitum village, we can actually see that it's being built and trust is being gained, and we see that beautiful thing actually happening. And then that can inspire us. Oh, this little thing over there might be good to build next. That will go well with what we see that's already been established.
Thank you.
Just a quick response to that, just because I think I like what you just, first of all, say it one more time. How do we say it correctly? Petitum. Petitum. Okay. The short answer, the real, is that this was approved and it's funded. Okay. What we all wish would have happened is when it was approved, the zoning was changed so that the zoning allowed for it. All we're trying to do at this point now is make sure if the zoning matched and we were allowed to do it, they think we'd be under construction, frankly. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to define all of this other stuff, but we do need to correct the zoning to allow for this before we put a shovel in the ground, or you could have, when you said, how does this get delayed again? That's how it gets delayed. Yeah. We can do that. We can do that.
So I'm Phil Walker. I've lived in the area for 35 years. I've been a resident here for 15. And Marlene, I remember when I got the note that this was going to be community center and they were going to cut the Keneshito farm and it was going to be allocated, I remember that. But I'm sorry to say, Putitum Village, I didn't know anything about. I totally and completely support it. So if it's been promised, it should be delivered. And that's pretty simple. And to me, as a contributor, as a part owner, if I've been putting money into this bond and paying for open space, that's exactly what it means. Open space is open space. If there's burial grounds there, leave them alone. The best thing to do is what you're doing right now, which is leaving things alone and stepping back. And I think we should maintain that position.
Wow.
Yeah. This poor guy, we look over him.
Yeah,
For the last hour I've been doing
Thank you. My name is Richard Hill Adams. I've lived in San Juan since 1978. My family's been in Orange County over 130 years. So I've watched most of Orange County in my lifetime go from strawberry fields, asparagus fields, orchards, and groves to a massive concrete. And to tell you, it's not as pretty as it used to be. So we have a village. It's approved. I like what the young lady said in the back. I fully support what she said. If it's approved, let's just step back. Let's change up the law to meet the objective of putting that village there make that work so you don't face litigation. And I agree. The city councils previously in different regimes that I've seen over the years, and I did run for the city council once, have been absolutely horrible in terms of what they have done to the city and the lawsuits, the litigation, and the money that the city has had to fork out. So I approve and I believe that, less litigation is a very good thing. So let's build the village. Let's go to the nation and ask what they would like to include over and above the base village, which has already been designed, and see what they can just come up with as a design and a plan. And then let's look at the excess land that is there, because if you've got 60 or 70 acres, you've definitely got some excess land. Then look at what could go there that would be compatible with the village. And personally, I look over San Juan every single morning having a cup of coffee. I don't really want to see a bunch of Airstream trailers pulling up there. Now, horses, that's another story. But not Airstream trailers, not big, wide motorhomes, not gigantic facilities. This should be an open space and a visual corridor of this community that matches up with the ridgeline litigation of 1974 that said you're not going to build houses on the ridgelines. Well, let's not build a bunch of stuff on the ground that isn't beneficial to the community. Let's build the village, let's change the law, and let's look at the excess land and then see what can be done there that is complementary. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Yeah, hello. Well, my name is Robert. My my mom was born in San Onofre in the 1930s. Been around this area for a long time. I'm a Capitol Beach resident. When Dana Point was getting ready to develop the Headlands area, there was a bunch of us got together, and today, when you go up to the Headlands, it is a completely protected natural place where people can go, walk, listen to the plants and feel the natural indigenous plants that are in that area. Had we not fought that, there'd be nothing but trillion-dollar condos on that point. But right now, everybody gets to go out there and enjoy that great natural space. I purposely will get off of Avery Parkway just to go down that road sometimes, just to feel the energy from all the natural plants and trees that are in that area. I would love to see that belong to the Native Americans who are here and for us to enjoy. Those are going to be things that will always be there that no place else has. Soccer fields everywhere, campgrounds everywhere. The other thing is, we're in a money crunch, you're saying? You think developing that's going to cure your money crunch? You'll always be in a money crunch. Figure out some budget cuts somewhere else. But to destroy that land, thinking that's going to solve your monetary problems, not going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Oh, go ahead.
Is this sort of like Lord of the Flies? Ralph's got the conch? Is it sort of like that?
No.
I got the
Maybe I recognize the voice. I don't know.
My name is Roger Buto. Some of you may know I'm the founder and executive director of an environmental group here in South Orange County. One of my co-founding directors, Michael Hazard, has lived in San Juan for 20 years. We're very engaged in all things environment in South County. And we've been around for 22 years. As many of you also know, I am a land use and regulatory compliance consultant. So actually, Brian, I have some questions that are pretty much binary. I have a comment, but first I'd like to ask...
You're 2 hours late, sir.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But thank you for calling me a sir. I was a corporal in the Marine Corps. I worked for a living, but that's all right. Number one, do you have variances to zoning in the city? Yes or no?
We're going to let staff, the more technical the question, the more we're going to rely on staff.
Use variances are not recognized as a legal means to change uses. You have to change either a combination of the general plan and zoning or zoning depending on the situation, but you cannot change uses by a variance.
Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, number two, if I'm reading this correctly, you actually didn't, in a sense, you granted exclusive negotiating rights with a corporation. You let out an RFP, request fund proposal. But since you only got really one player, that's not exactly competitive bidding. So I would say, excuse me, but that is not under the environmental regulations and the industry I work within. That is not really competitive, which is what an RFP should cough up.
We started with 11, to be clear.
Okay. Next question. It seems to me that a lot of the issue here has to do with what goes with any land use entitlements. If you do not grant variances, and thank you for answering that question, that was actually a trick question. I've been around enough attorneys, never ask a question you don't have the answer to. If you didn't grant a variance, how did you wind up with commercial development on this parcel to begin with? You shouldn't have had any commerce unless you kept continually changing the zoning, which I'm not hearing. This lady here with the glasses, I believe she has red hair and a white blouse, she asked a very astute question. We call it, and I'm sure Ben remembers this very well from Laguna, we're constantly churning. I live in Laguna Beach. We're constantly churning, these specific plans, management plans, general plans, and we are continually finding, even ourselves, incongruencies. When you have incongruencies, when things are disharmonious, you need to make those things harmonious before you proceed. This is, if anyone knows what a recipe for baking is, we call it an algorithm. You have obviously not followed the algorithm, or this council would not be sitting in this position today. So lastly, and more importantly, I not only support the Juaneño Nation, but as a land use consultant and someone who, believe me, knows what he's doing, I would like to offer my services gratis to the Juaneño Nation to show them that there are people that are still willing to stand with them and for them. And believe me, is it Chairman Romero? I'll make sure I give you my card. And if anybody that knows me can tell you, I'm dead serious, okay? And we'll help you to the maximum extent that we can, because I think all that land should be yours. We're not talking, this is not a reparation. For those of you that are insulted that you had to spend money for this bond, this is not a form of a reparation. My God, do you have a conscience? If you have a conscience at all, you know what happened to the people in this area. Everything, if you didn't know it, everything from Aliso south was part of the San Juan mission. Everything north of it was the Gabrieleños. But this is their nation. This is their community, and you're now part of their community. They certainly didn't come here after you. They were antecedents, and I would hope that you would respect the fact. See, I'm from Laguna. Some might say I have no right to speak here today. I speak for the earth. I'm an American. I'm a Marine. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I didn't raise my hand to come back and take land away from people. I saw what happened when you take land away from indigenous people, and it's not a good thing. So I would not only encourage you, I'm sorry Dennis left here because he got so disgusted, but once again, I will be here for you. I will give you my card as soon as I can, and hopefully I will be of some value to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Vaughn. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Juaneño Bandit Mission Indians, Hashpa Nation. I have a question for any one of you on council. Have any of you walked the grounds of Patutum?
Yeah, so for 10
over the
years.
fence. Like went over the fence and walked the grounds.
Yes, just so for 10 years, I lived right above there. I've walked this tons and tons and tons.
Okay,
with my
so
kids.
if you ever walk the grounds when they do weed abatement and they send the tractors in there and they overturn the dirt, you could walk the grounds. I've walked the grounds with Pat Martz, and we could see where our children played. We can see where our people ate. Those are our ancestors here, not for 3 generations, 4 generations, for 12,000 years. We can that proof is still on that property today. You can go out there, move the dirt 2 inches, and bring up artifacts from our ancestors that lived there when it was our mother village. So today, I would challenge you guys or ask you guys to please, once they do weed abatement, walk the grounds to see what we see. That's our home. And it's very personal to us, and that's why you get so much commotion going over and emotions going towards this village, because that's our home, and that's the last part of the city that the city potentially could take away from us. And it's always belonged to us. And we're so glad that you guys enjoy our city, because it was all of our city, it was all of our land for thousands of years. And you're all guests here. It's not pushing it at all. This is our ancestral territory. It is ours. And so you pay taxes. We didn't pay taxes back then. It was our ancestral territory, and still is. So I just challenge you guys to walk the grounds, and you can see what we see. We're going, it's like you driving by your old house that you grew up in. That was my old bedroom. That was where I used to play when I was little. This is where our people lived, survived, and died. Thank you.
Again, if you've already had a chance to speak, if you could put your hands down, because there's a lot of people who are asking to speak for the first time, and we want to make sure we get to them.
Hi, my name is Roger, and I'm a resident of San Juan Capistrano. I'd just like to say my concerns are not nearly as valid as perhaps the folks from the Native American group here, which I fully support the park, but I will say that you can start driving in Los Angeles and come down the 5 freeway, and for 50 miles, you're in the city. Seems like one continuous city. Until you get to the city limit sign of San Juan Capistrano, and that's when it opens up. And I like that. And I'd like to see it stay that way. And I think nature's been doing a great job taking care of that land out there, and it's been very cost effective. I think we ought to just let Mother Nature continue. Aside from the park, of course. Thank you.
Hadn't thought about it from the point of view of maintenance costs. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
I've got one over here, Brian.
Go ahead. My name is Greg Powers. I'm a resident of Dana Point, but I also am responsible for the AYSO soccer program here in San Juan Capistrano. We have about 1,000 players that play on these fields, and we have about 650 San Juan Capistrano families that I represent in this case. It's a really interesting dialogue because I'm sure that if I was to poll all of our families, we would have families that would be sitting on this side, and we have families sitting on this side of the equation. So I surely do not want to speak to the issues related to the Petitum Park or to the village or to the Native American issues or some of the other challenges the city has had. But I do want to speak to the idea that soccer is really a significant sport here in this town. We do have fields, yes. More fields would always be great, but the biggest issue I was looking at was I was excited about seeing the general plan allows for lighted fields. And I'm sure lighted fields would not be something you guys would want next to the Petitum Village. So I have an issue, I've got to work through that, but the idea is we have 1,000 kids that are playing on these fields all the time. The only reason the fields don't get you see kids on the fields is because we're trying to rest them, because there's so many kids playing. Also, the Mission has its own league, and there's a ton of kids that are playing with that. So please understand, soccer is really a vibrant, significant issue here in this community, in this town, and we do want to see soccer be able to thrive in this community. That's part of the reason this park is such an active park. But we do think that maybe we might improve some of that without having impact property out there. If we could get some lights over here, or maybe we could set some fields up there. But I'm also concerned about maintenance. And so that's one of the things that we would be looking for. If we were to put fields out there, we would be very concerned about making sure there was funds available to maintain them. So whether that comes through whether budgets or whatever, but that's just so you know that there is an interest here that is not particularly rooted in some of the historical land issues, but we do have community uses. And I was asked to be here by a group of our people in our region. So thank you for your time.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Hi there. My name is Alex Lujano. I'm born and raised here at San Juan Capistrano since 1970. My dad was Ignacio Lujano, and we actually lived on that property for about 38 years. He worked that land from 1970 to 2008 when he was evicted. But the perspective I wanted to share with you and want to share with the council members is I want to bear witness that those lands do have artifacts and do have remnants of the Native Americans, and we've turned those over. So just wanted to help you guys that when you do get to that point, to be very just conscious of that it does exist. We've handed over bones to, David Ballard as his father, because my dad was working that land. He worked for Swanner. That was his employer. Bill Bathgate was his foreman. He knew John Lakoa. He worked on Kinoshita farm here when it was a farm in 1958. So, but not being someone of that nation, he always respected that. And when he would run across something, he'd say that, we got to give this back. This has to be returned to those folks. So my perspective or encouragement to you guys, again, you guys, is that now the responsibility is on you. And you want to be the ones to put this thing together and make it a win-win situation. So, I would encourage you. I would pray for you. Offer my services. You want to call me. You want to ask, because, like I said, I have played on that property, rode my motorcycle. My family's been there for, again, 40 years. So if there's something you want to know about that, you want to know where this something exists, how it operates, what type of plants or animals are there, we could help you with that. I support what they have going on. I don't live here anymore. I live in Huntington Beach, but I just got married a couple months ago, so that's why I left. But I consider myself, longtime resident, and I think for most of us, I was just thinking about this, and I know it's kind of corny, but I think we're all kind of like swallows. We go away, but then we all come back. And someday I plan to come back, and I would love to see this. And everybody talks about the, that part being the gateway to San Juan. Well, for my dad, for 38 years, he grew those orange trees, kept them going as his own. And I'm sure a lot of people came through there and was like, wow, what a nice place this is. I think I want to live here, and I know for a fact it's not that hard and it's not that expensive to keep that going, because he was paid $500 a month to do that. And he took care of 110 acres or whatever it is. And San Juan, I know for a fact, in the 90s got like $1 million grant to revitalize the orange groves. I don't know what ever happened. Nobody ever asked us how to do it, because it's actually pretty simple. And they put sprinklers on top of the ground thinking that there was grass, but they were orange trees that needed to be immersed. But nobody asked us. So ask me if you want. I will offer my information, my help freely. But anyways, I know what position you guys are in. So again, whatever help I can do, I'd like to do that. But again, I just want to bear witness that those things do exist, and do whatever you need to do in the right way so everybody's happy. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your offer to help. I have a promise to her here. This gentleman hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Nunez, and I'm a descendant of the Hashimid Nation, and I'm from the Rios family, and I'm another swallow that came back 27 years ago. And I'm also a storyteller at the mission. And what is the saddest thing for me is to know that the story of our people is filtered through another entity that really brought genocide to our people. The mission is beautiful, and I'm very grateful to be a storyteller there. But when those people, and if you're here and you worked on the Putiram project, would you stand? Because Pat, thank you, and Avalia, and Teresa, please stand up if you were part of that committee, because there was a committee that worked through 3 councils, 3 mayors, and everything was set. Today we buried another elder in our tribe. And wouldn't it have been wonderful if before she left, we could have held her hand and said, Helen, that village is going to take place. The council assured us of that. But my mother passed, your mother passed. How many mothers have passed? Our ancestors have passed. And yet we have nothing. Putiram was meant for not just one storyteller. It was so everyone that's part of our tribe could tell their family story their way. And that we could have ceremony that will continue our people forever. We just wanted that land. And this scripture comes to mind. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. If this went through 3 councils and 3 mayors, and it was approved and done, let the yes be yes. And in our language, which we lost, I say this, Nukshun lovek ompalof. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I'm just one voice, but there's 1,800 people that are still living here, and they have a story, and those stories need to be told. And I thank you for letting me to speak.
Can I ask a question?
Do you have a new face?
If I may. I've been here 13 years. My name is Mary. And I've heard histories, and I'm actually learning quite a bit of San Juan, more tonight than ever. But I have to say there's a division line there that as if we're not welcomed here. And it kind of hurts because it's not just your nation or it's not just your history, but it's our home as well. So I think right now it's a matter of what are we going to do now? It's not the past or the future, it's now. What can we do now? So I'm sorry, I'm getting a little nervous because I got personally attacked in the sense that just because I didn't grow up here. Well, for some reason my faith led me here. I didn't ask or look for this place, it led me here. To a time that was really hard for me out in North Carolina. So, just a little history. This is us now, and what are we going to do together? So, what I say, okay, from the first slide, it was 21 million that it was bought, this lot.
Not just this property, but part of the 21 million was used to purchase this property.
Okay, so why hasn't the, correct me if I'm wrong, the native have bought this location? Is it the government? So I'm curious. I'd like to learn why hasn't a time where, you know, right now where the laws are, we have so much privilege here that you can actually negotiate the property, sell it to them, or have them that opportunity to buy it. I don't want a casino here because the minute that thing's built, I'm gone.
Okay,
so here's the thing. If this is such an emotional history, believe you me, I live literally in that corner of the road and I don't want traffic coming in. And what about my children? Just because they don't have the history here, they're not going to be included? I mean, seriously, that's just unwelcoming.
Okay, so I would just suggest, thank you, I would just suggest that we're throwing out ideas. One idea was, you know, could the Hashimans have purchased the land years ago? The answer is no, not financially feasible. So let's move on. Thank you. Oh, hey, go ahead. I've been sitting there all night. Well, how are you?
I think Jill, that is the curse of sitting in the front row, because when you're up here speaking, you tend to kind of do this.
I thought you were personally ignoring me, but we'll let that go. Listening to all of this tonight, it seems very clear to me several things. There's nobody in this room that doesn't agree that the village is good and that they all seem in favor of it. And I think Troy's mentioned earlier that we've got to get the language correct so that we don't have any more lawsuits. This city has been inundated with lawsuits. Then I heard staff say earlier in the presentation that it's unusual for a city to tax their citizens for open space. We volunteer. Do you know anybody in this room who volunteers to pay taxes to the government for whatever? So we voted, we worked so hard, like Marlene said, forever to get the bond passed. We knew this was going to be the building and the community center, and the open space was what people were looking for also. To keep the concrete away from this city, the development of every single piece of dirt does not have to happen. Let's keep some open space, keep it natural if that's all we do with it. But the very thought of having at the very entrance to this beautiful city that I've lived in for 45 years, long time, 9,000 people when I got here, that drive on Camino Capistrano, when you get off Avery Parkway, is a delight. This is the entrance to our city. It is critical in my mind that we do not have camping, glamping, 72 room for 72 motorhomes, 52 huge tents. That is not what the entrance to this historic city right next to the village is all about. And the secret to me is that we volunteered to pay for this land. And for 25 years, I've lived here for 45, we have paid that bill off. We own that. We should have had a deed free and clear. It's now in the city hands, and I think you are doing the right thing having these workshops. I think that's great, because I don't think it was truly understood how strongly the people felt in this city about their open space. And so I think if you can get on and get that language straightened out so we don't result in having two different parcels finishing up with a lawsuit because somebody thought that they could do something that they couldn't.
Is there anybody else, thanks, Jill. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak tonight who has not yet had the opportunity to speak?
You have, she has. You have.
Okay. And then in the Pearls, is that, you're also, could we get her a microphone as well?
You want to finish up for your spouse? We're good. We'll come back.
Yeah.
That's it. I get it.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, by the way. My name is Michelle Castillo, and I am a Hashiman woman. And I'd like to address the woman right there. I've been taught by my elder, Adelia, actually, you know, as an Hashiman woman, to always be a good host. That's what we are. We're hosts. We're from this land. We're not denying you anything, and we're not denying your children anything. What we're doing, what makes people uncomfortable, is we're sticking up for ourselves. After years and years and years and years of being stepped on. And people are very uncomfortable with that. And we're at a time and age right now where we need to preserve. We need to preserve, and you mentioned your grandchildren, right? Your grandchildren aren't going to know what an open field is because we're living in a concrete jungle. And the beauty of San Juan Capistrano is it's old. It's like an old town. You walk and you feel, there's a beautiful feeling that I feel when I'm walking downtown. And I'm looking at all the history and all the beautiful things, especially even the mission. There's a lot of sad things about the mission, right? But there's still a beauty to it. And we need to preserve it. And if we don't work on preserving the mother village, which, by the way, I've been taught that the mother village is the heart of Orange County. And if we don't take care of her and we disrespect her, Orange County is gone. Downtown San Juan Capistrano is going to be big, giant buildings. It will be. It will be. Maybe not right now. Maybe not in your lifetime. Maybe not in my lifetime. But you know what? There's going to be somebody there who's going to say, you know what? We need more money. And we need to grow. And I just feel like, you know what? There's plenty of buildings around now. There's nothing wrong with the having an open space, with preserving. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
I'm Virginia Brady, and I'm another one of the folks here who has lived here for 45 years, long time. And I watched this community grow, and I raised my children here. And one of the things I appreciated most about San Juan, and I still appreciate, is that all of the people who have come here and who have invested their life, their time, their talent, and their treasure have been here to see that San Juan has a very unique history, and it needs to be preserved and saved and valued and appreciated. And also, San Juan has, I certainly hope, a very unique future that is something you just don't find in any other town in this county. And I remember when they opened this facility. I was here, and I still have somewhere in my home the deed that they gave to every single member of this city that they now owned a piece of open space. Do you remember that? I remember that. And it was something absolutely unique, and I have shared that with a lot of folks over my lifetime, many students when I was teaching, and other people, that, you know, if you really want to do the very best for your community where you live, you have to appreciate not only where it came from and the people who were here, but also welcome those who come and who contribute and help it grow and help it become better, and value the old, preserve the older, beautiful memories, but also build on them so you can have a fine and positive future for everyone who lives here. I helped with paying for all of this land, and I don't regret it. I do regret it if we can't preserve the village, because that's part of our history. And if the people who come after us are going to be able to build on that and appreciate that and then build future that is worth having, they need to know where that village is. They need to be able to go there to see it, to appreciate it, and to learn to know and appreciate people like Jackie and other friends that I have made here over the last 45 years.
Thank you so much. Brian, if I could just,
Carrie, go ahead.
rather than, Carrie, I'm going to stop here just for a second. So we've been here 2.5 hours, okay? And everybody who's had an opportunity to speak, I think, has been able to speak. I know there's multiple people who wanted to speak multiple times, and I think I got to do that, so I feel a little bit guilty. But here's what I would suggest we do, okay? We're going to meet again in a few weeks. Okay, and we haven't kind of talked about, we're going to meet again in a few weeks. Some of you are going to want to come back. I hope you'll encourage your neighbors. I want to avoid kind of like a summary, well, what are you guys going to do now? Because we committed to the community that we would listen to them twice. Okay, and some people didn't get here tonight because they knew that we would listen to them in a few weeks. So please don't go home tonight and say, I wonder what they're going to do based on what we told them tonight. Please consider these kind of 2 meetings, 1 meeting. They're just separated on the calendar a little bit. And I would consider this like it's 8 o'clock, 2.5 hours. We can pause this meeting and come back in a couple of weeks. I would, are you okay with that scheduling, Mayor? But I would say, I've had these thoughts as I've kind of just been listening for the last little while. I think that we're starting to get a vision, and if I described it right now, I think I get everybody in the room kind of doing this. I don't want to do that until after the next meeting, okay? But I want to say that there is going to be a disconnect between what I think people want to see at the Northwest Open Space and the funds available to see that become a reality because of the aversion to some of the other commercial entities that could have otherwise provided for those funds. Okay, let me just say that clearly. There's a cool group that in town has done stuff before, and whether or not this is something up their alley or not, I don't really know, but there's been times in our city's history where not only have we been willing to pay for things, okay, but we've been able to get out there and put our shovel in the soil and do some of the work. If this property is going to be a lot of what you guys are kind of envisioning that it's going to be, I can tell you right now the funding is not available at the city to make it the oasis that you're thinking it should be. But if we all got a shovel and we each brought 2 trees, we're a lot closer. And so kind of in the mindset as you're going away a little bit, instead of saying we're going to say no to a bunch of stuff, start working in the back of the mind, and maybe when we come to our next vision, some thoughts about what, if we all put our shoulder into this a little bit, there's not a magical city with a whole bunch of money that just waves its fingers and these things happen. This is the city at this point. Okay? And if there's something magical and cool going to go out there, I think that we're all going to have our fingers in the dirt a little bit. Okay? Mayor, do you have anything else to
say? No, I'm sorry. That's okay. I know we're all anxious. Carrie made the distinction of that she spoke during the questions section, not the comment section, and she's been a part of the Patutum effort. So she'll speak for a moment, and then I'm going to give you my closing thoughts, and then we're going to wrap up, and we hope you'll rejoin for more listening sessions. But go ahead, Carrie. If we can keep it in the 1 minute range, please.
No, it's not going to be 1 minute. This is the evening that there isn't a 3-minute limit, all right? I would like to be able to say what I came to say, like everyone else. I would like to be treated equally and not less. I want to say what's in my heart, that that I have developed over the last 5 years working with our Hashimoan neighbors. I have worked with Adelia. I have sat at the feet of Jackie with the fourth graders. I have known Nathan. I was the one who asked Nathan, please put together a group that includes all of our Hashimoan neighbors. And all of the others that were in the group, and their names are escaping me at the moment. But I want to say this, the greatest loss to the Hashimoan community when the coming of the Europeans was their cultural traditions. While the Spanish fathers shared their Christian beliefs out of love for the natives, they nonetheless saw their cultural beliefs as inferior, not worth keeping. The Mexican government took their land and gave it to their friends as land grants. And the Americans took many of the grants for themselves. And once gold was discovered, put a bounty on the heads of the Native Americans because they dared to claim some of the gold. They murdered in those years 16,000 Native Americans, just in those years alone. Those not rounded up and put into reservations hid in fear for many, many years. And I'm sure there are people in here tonight whose grandparents and great-grandparents still hesitated to speak up because of that. Through all this, Orange County's own tribe has still survived. San Juan is home to about 100 families, and more than 1,800 still live in Orange County. Our local families, led by people like Teresa Romero and Happy Hun, and sadly today we buried the matriarch, Helen McMullen. What I have found is kind and gracious people, humble people, humble in their spirit, not humble in any other way. As were their forebears who first met Father Sarah. According to the biographer who traveled with him, Father Francisco Palou, he described what humble and kind people they were. To begin getting to know them, I ask you to watch the video series, Indigenous Voices of San Juan Capistrano online. Yeah, it's very edifying. Now our city has a great opportunity to restore a bit of the cultural history and traditions of the Hashimoan people on 1 acre where their main village was located, securing for ourselves and our posterity one of the most fascinating aspects of our city's very long history. We have the chance to learn how the beliefs and traditions of the Hashimoan people helped them to thrive in this place for 10,000 years without using up or debasing the land and resources as some tribes in other places did. The lessons we learn may help us to maintain our beautiful valley in years to come. Do I believe we should build the Patuitum Cultural Center course? Do I believe it should be a priority for our city? Yes, definitely. We have the funds both to build it and to maintain it. And I would pose that quite a lot of the funds can only be used in this way. As another resident, Dave Solt, said recently, the pre-contact narrative is missing in our story, and it will be a source of pride for all of us. What to do with the rest of the open area? Our Hashman Committee has asked that it be restored to its natural plantings so that visitors can enjoy it as it was. Certainly filling it with 150 to 250 RV pads, a few cabins and Airstream trailers, a clubhouse, a store, etc., as has been proposed, is not the answer. It would dig into archaeologically significant land mercilessly and fill it with inappropriately intense for-profit development that most of our residents would never enjoy. Restore the original plantings. Include trails to enjoy them. Those aren't expensive things to do. And call it done. This should not be held hostage to commercial largesse. The City Council voted to fund and build the project separately, then let others contribute to it if they want to. The natives, we voted for you to have exclusive use, but to have use for your ceremonies 4 times each year. And that needs to be remembered and respected. Lastly, there are open-air museums all over this world. If this isn't an open-air museum, which is an allowed use, I don't know what is. So please make this open-air museum a reality.
Thank you, Carrie. Okay, so as Troy mentioned, we'll be back here later in the month, and I hope everybody just keep in mind what we're really set out to do here is listen. And I hope you feel, at the very least, pardon me, we did that. I think everybody was heard tonight, and I think it's a lot of feedback, and it's good feedback. I think we're still caught up a little bit where the park and the broader picture a little bit mangled together. I don't think that necessarily has to be the case, but we'd really like to hear what people have in mind for other uses for a lot of the other acreage. I mean, I think it'd be great to hear. One takeaway from me is the notion that we have a fair number of people in this city who value open space simply for what you would perceive open space to be, truly open space, just the value of open, empty space with nature about it, and a number of other takeaways. So it's been a very interesting evening. Thank you for being patient and waiting to speak. We tried to be as fair as possible. Staff was diligent in putting the evening together and very thorough. We're grateful for that. And tell your friends to come back in 2 weeks because they're part owners of the property. And we thank you for your participation. Have a great evening.